Now, as these two were talking thus to each other, meanwhile the volleys were too much for Aias, who could no longer hold back and hold his place. The will of Zeus beat him back, and the proud Trojans with their spears. And around his temples the shining helmet clashed horribly under the shower of strokes. He was hit constantly on the strong wrought cheek pieces, and his left shoulder was tired from always holding up the big glittering shield. Yet they could not beat him out of his place, though they piled their missiles upon him. His breath came ever hard and painful. The sweat ran pouring down his body from every limb. He could find no means to catch his breath, but evil was piled on evil about him. Tell me now, you muses, who have your homes on Olympus, how fire was first thrown upon the ships of the Achaeans. Hector stood up close to Aias and hacked at the ash spear with his great sword, striking behind the socket of the spearhead, and slashed it clean away, so that Telamonian Aias shook there in his hand a lop spear, while far away from him the bronze spearhead fell echoing to the ground. And Aias knew in his blameless heart, and shivered for knowing it, how this was God's work, how Zeus high thundering cut across the intention in all his battle, how he planned that the Trojans should conquer. He drew away from out of the missiles, and the Trojans threw weariless fire on the fast ship. And suddenly the quenchless flame streamed over it. So the fire was at work on the ship's stern. But Achilles struck his hands against both his thighs and called out to Patroclus, "Rise up, illustrious Patroclus, rider of horses. I see how the ravening fire goes roaring over our vessels. They must not get our ships, so we cannot run away in them. Get on your armor faster. I will muster our people." He spoke, and Patroclus was helming himself in the bronze that glittered. First he placed along his legs the beautiful greaves, linked with their silver fastenings to hold the greaves at the ankles. Afterwards he girt upon his chest a corselet, starry and elaborate, of swift-foot Alcides. Across his shoulder he slung the sword with nails of silver, a bronze sword, and above it the great shield, huge and heavy. Over his mighty head he set the well-fashioned helmet, with the horsehair crest and the plumes knotted terribly above it. He took up two powerful spears that fit his hand's grips, only he did not take the spear of blameless Alcides, huge, heavy, thick, which no one else of all the Achaeans could handle. But Achilles alone knew how to wield it. The Pylian ash spear, which Chiron had brought to his fathers from high on Pelion to be death for fighters. Patroclus ordered Automedon rapidly to harness the horses, a man he honored most after Achilles, the breaker of battles, who stood most staunchly by him against the fury of fighting. For him, Automedon led the fast-running horses under the yoke, Xanthos and Balios, who tore with the wind's speed. Horses stormy Podarge once conceived of the west wind, and bore as she grazed in the meadow beside the swirl of the ocean. In the traces beside them he put unfaulted Pedasus, whom Achilles brought back once he had stormed Eetion city. He, mortal as he was, ran beside the immortal horses. But Achilles went meanwhile to the Myrmidons and arrayed them all in their war gear along the shelters, and they as wolves who tear flesh raw, in whose heart the battle fury is tireless, who have brought down a great horned stag in the mountains, and then feed on him, till the jaws of every wolf run blood, and then go all in a pack to drink from a spring of dark running water, lapping with their lean tongues along the black edge of the surface, and belching up the clotted blood. In the heart of each one is a spirit, untremulous, but their bellies are full and groaning. As such, the lords of the Myrmidons and their men of counsel around the brave henchmen of swift-footed Achates swarmed, and among them was standing warlike Achilles, and urged on the fighting men with their shields and the horses. 50 were the fast-running ships wherein Achilles, beloved of Zeus, had led his men to Troy, and in each one were 50 men, his companions in arms, at the rowing benches. He had made 5 leaders among them, and to these entrusted the command, while he in his great power was lord over all of them. One battalion was led by Mentetheus of the shining corselet, son of Spiritios. The river swelled from the bright sky, born of the daughter of Peleus, Polydore the lovely, to the unremitting Spiritios, when a woman lay with the immortal, but in his name to Paresis, son Boros, who married Polydora formerly, and gave gifts beyond count to win her. The next battalion was led by warlike Eudorius, a maiden's child, born to one lovely in the dance, Polymele, the daughter of Pylus, whom strong Hermes Agriphones loved when he watched her with his eyes among the girls dancing in the choir for Clamorius, Artemis of the golden distaff. Presently Hermes the healer went up to her into her chamber, and lay secretly with her, and she bore him a son, the shining Eudorus, a surpassing runner, and a quick man in battle. After this, Aletheia of the hard pains had brought out the child into the light, and he looked on the sun shining. Actor's son, Achilles, in the majesty of his great power, led her to his house, when he had given her numberless gifts to win her. And the old man Pylus took the child and brought him up kindly and cared for him in affection, as if he had been his own son. The leader of the 3rd battalion was warlike Persandros, Mamoli's son, who outshone all the rest of the Myrmidons in spear fighting, next to Pelion Achilles, henchman. The 4th battalion was led by Phoenix, the aged horseman. The 5th by Alcimendon, the blameless son of Laerces. But after Achilles gave them their stations all in good order beside the leader, he laid his stern injunction upon them. Myrmidons, not one of you can forget those mutterings, those threats that beside the running ships you made at the Trojans. In all the time of my anger, and it was I you were blaming, as hard son of Peleus, your mother nursed you on gall. You have no pity to keep your companions here by the ships unwilling. We should go back home again, then in our seafaring vessels, now that this wretched anger has befallen your spirit. Often you would gather in groups and so murmur against me. And now is shown a great work of that fighting you long for. Then let each man take the heart of strength to fight with the Trojans. So he spoke, and stirred the spirit and strength in each man, and in their ranks, as they listened to the king, pull closer together. As a man builds solid a wall with stones set close together, for the rampart of a high house keeping out the force of the winds, so together were the helms and shields massive in the middle. For shield leaned on shield, helmet on helmet, man against man, and the horsehair crests along the horns of the shining helmets touched as they bent their heads. So dense were they formed on each other. And before them all were the 2 men in their armor, Patroclus and Automedon, both of them in one single fury, to fight in front of the Myrmidons. But meanwhile Achilles went off into his shelter, and lifted the lid from a lovely, elaborately wrought chest, which Thetis, the silver-footed, had put in his ship to carry, and filled it fairly with tunics and mantles to hold the wind from a man, and with fleecy blankets. Inside this lay a wrought goblet, nor did any other man drink the shining wine from it, nor did Achilles pour the wine from it to any other god, but only Zeus, father. He took this now out of the chest, cleaned it with sulfur first, afterward washed it out in the bright running water, and washed his own hands, and poured shining wine into the goblet, and stood in the middle of forecourt and prayed, and poured the wine, looking into the sky, not unseen by Zeus, who delights in the thunder. High Zeus, Lord of Podona, Pelasgian living afar off, brooding over wintry Dodona, your prophets about you living, the Seloi who sleep on the ground with feet unwashed. Hear me, as one time before when I prayed to you, you listened and did me honor, and smote strongly the host of the Achaeans. So one more time bring to pass the wish I prayed for. For see, I myself am staying where the ships are assembled. But I send out my companion, and many Myrmidons with him, to fight. Let glory, Zeus of the wide brows, go with them. Make brave the heart inside his breath, so that even Hector will find out whether our henchman knows how to fight his battles by himself, or his hands rage invincible only those times when I myself go into the grind of the war god. But when he has beaten back from the ships their clamorous onset, then let him come back to me and the running ships, unwounded with all his armor, and with the companions who fight close beside him. So he spoke in prayer, and Zeus of the councils heard him. The Father granted him one prayer, and denied him the other, that Patroclus should beat back the fighting assault on the vessels he allowed, but refused to let him come back safe out of the fighting. When Achilles had poured the wine and prayed to Zeus' father, he went back into the shelter, stowed the cup in the chest, and came out to stand in front of the door, with the desire in his heart still to watch the grim encounter of Achaeans and Trojans. Now they who were armed in the company of great-hearted Patroclus went onward, until in high confidence they charged upon the Trojans. The Myrmidons came out like wasps at a wayside when little boys have gotten to the habit of making them angry by always teasing them as they live in their house by the roadside. Silly boys, they do something that hurts many people. And if some man who travels on the road happens to pass them and stirs them unintentionally, so they, in the heart of their fury, come swarming out, each one from his place, to fight for their children. In heart and in fury like these, the Myrmidons, streaming from their ships, and with tireless clamor arising, Patroclus called afar in a great voice to his companions, Myrmidons, companions of Peleus' son Achilles, be men now, dear friends. Remember your furious valor. We must bring honor to Peleus' son, far the greatest of the Argives, by the ships. We, even the hentsmen who fight beside him. So Atreus' son, wide-ruling Agamemnon, may recognize his madness, that he did no honor to the best of the Achaeans.